Hi, my name is Phil Sowell. I am Assembly of God preacher's son. This is just a little testimony about some of my life before I really got to God. I'm 40 years old and was 40 at April 5th, 1982, the day I had a last heart attack. At that time, I decided that I'd really better get to God and do what God has wanted me to do. I feel that He has called me to preach. So many times I have fought Him over this, but at this time I am going to follow God. Whatever God wants me to do, I will do. I'll preach or whatever. Being an Assembly of God preacher's son, I'm red-headed, freckle-faced, and growing up was pretty rough. I was always called, that was back in the days when they called us the Holy Rollers. Well, being red-headed and freckle-faced and a Holy Roller preacher's son, any one of them was a fight. So I spent most of my life fighting. Even as a kid, kids are cruel and they don't really mean what they say, but if you call me a holy roller or red-headed, or they had a bunch of sayings which I won't go into, but any one of them was a fight. So even as a kid, I would fight, and just had to. And just seemed like every time I'd work my way up, well, nothing have it, we'd move on to another town and I'd have to start all over again. But God brought me through it, and I'm going to tell you little stories about my life, maybe to help somebody else. Remembering back when I was a kid, about 6, 7, 8 years old, I remember going down to the corner watching TV, because we didn't have TV at that time. It was, folks didn't believe on having one in the house because of the violence and everything on it, which now I can really understand. But I'd go down there and I'd watch a Western cowboy, and it seems like the cowboy would walk in no matter whatever happened, but they'd take them a few shots of whiskey, and boy, the first thing you know, they'd fight. I always thought, boy, that was the greatest thing to ever do, to be like a cowboy, not afraid of anybody and just fight all the time. I really thought, now that's where it's at. So at home we'd have Pepsi once in a while. It used to come in big 12-ounce bottles, and I'd get me a small glass and I'd pour me out about what you looked like the cowboys would drink, one about a small jigger or maybe an inch or so in there, and I'd drink her straight down. And boy, my eyes would burn, my eyes would water, my nose would burn, and boy, and I really thought that was something. So I'd have me about 3 or 4 or 5 shots, and I had a new pair of cowboy boots. And I'd put my britcher legs inside my boots, and I'd strut around a while, and I'd have me a couple more shots. Well, I had what you call a miniature collie, and his name was Tippy. So I'd go walking out there on the porch, just like, really was walking out of a bar. And old Tippy would be standing there wagging his tail and just really happy to see me, and I'd stroll up to him and I'd kick him off the porch and give him 3 minutes to get out of town, or I'd kill him. And that was from watching them cowboy shows. Well, as I kept growing up and doing one thing after another, got about 15 years old, I got the real stuff. So I'd start drinking, getting in a few fights, stealing cars, just whatever anybody dared me to do, we'd seem to do. And once in a while we'd try some dope. 17, I went in the Navy, and by then I was drinking pretty heavy, fighting all the time, and got to getting on dope. The service seemed like, boy, it just floated around there just like it would in a big city, or worse. Anyway, I got to be a locksmith, and I'd set the safes and cut keys and draw supplies. Well, being a locksmith, you was in good with everybody, and I could just about get all the dope from sick bay that I wanted. And spent a little over 2 or 3 years in the Navy and got out. Well, by then I was an alcoholic and pretty much hooked on drugs. By then I just, boy, every night was drinking and out partying, and I wrecked every car I ever had, tore my dad's cars up. And I got married about 21, and it didn't last a couple of years. Was going to South America and to get rich, as always. And we was down in old Mexico, and I'd been quit drinking for about a year, trying to get back to God a little bit. Well, I left my wife to go down there. I didn't tell her. I just took off, me and my brother and another fella. 1,800 miles down into Old Mexico. Read a menu and it said a day without love, without wine is like a day without love. Well, I couldn't stand that. I was brokenhearted and everything. I was losing my wife and my little girl. I had a little girl. So I ordered me a bottle of wine. And that started worse than ever. I was back to drinking every night. And I drank for 10 years. They were better just about drunk every night. And wake up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, I wouldn't have a drink of water. I'd get me a beer, a shot of whiskey or something, and drink that. Well, in I think 76 or 77, anyway, Brother Tommy Anderson had a tent meeting out here. And I was at the end of my ropes because I'd stuck a 45 to my head and pulled the trigger and it misfired. And I knew I had to have help, and I called my folks. I said, if God can't deliver me, help me with this problem I got. I don't want to live. It put me in the state hospital. So we went on, and Brother Tommy Anderson was having a tent revival, so I went to that. And I stepped out and went down and got prayed for and instantly got delivered from the alcohol and dope. And I was on it so bad that if God hadn't done it, they'd had to put me in hospital or something. Took me off a little bit at times, hard at the stuff that I was on. And I don't know the names of everything I used to take. I just take anything. And I'm more or less a junkie. If you had something, what I wouldn't do to get it, I won't go into everything. I can't. But I'd just about do anything. I did everything but kill to get my alcohol and my dope. Well, God delivered me then. I met my wife, present wife now, and we was married, and I didn't live for God like I should. And in 1977, I believe it was, we was separated, been separated for a year, and I was running wild, and I wasn't drinking. I never went back to my drinking. God delivered me good of that, but I was about everything else, and my dope. So in 1977, I had a heart attack. And a couple months after I had that heart attack, I was really missing my family. I had a wife and 2 little girls, but then just a baby was just born. And I told God, I said, God, if I can have my family back, I'll serve you. I'll do what you want me to do. So I got my family back in less than 2 or 3 days. Well, I served God for a while, and it went on, and I kept getting farther away, and farther away, and I was more interested in the things the world had to offer. I had motorcycles, had a Cadillac, had boats, had just about everything, but nothing yet satisfied like God did. Well, in 1978, December to be exact, I was having problems building back up with my heart, so I had open heart surgery. They did a triple bypass on me in 1978, December the 7th. And I made everything right with God again, which before, you get too bad, when I knew I was getting bad, you best get close to God when you're going through something like that. So I served God for a while again, and I went back to work, and I was what you call a lead man, working foreman. And I was always wanting to be a boss into supervision. I thought, boy, that's where it's at. Well, I made it. Then 6 months after I had the open heart surgery, which is very rare. The company I worked for was very college-minded, and I have only got an 8th grade education. But I was promoted into supervision, and I'd prayed about it, and I wanted it bad, so I got it. And this went on, and then they'd have their parties and Christmas parties and everything, and trying to think everybody was better than everybody just because you was in supervision and everything. And I really thought, boy, this is where it's at. Well, and it went on like that for a couple of years, and I was doing good, and did a few things. One way, got me bought a new truck, 4-wheel drive Jimmy, and we had a car wreck with it. I got $10,000 out of it.
Did a couple other things. I got back to being greedy for money, and we bought us had a new boat, had a new motorcycle, and this and that. Well, anyway, when my boat caught a fire, my truck burned up, so I bought me a Lincoln Continental and a yacht. And I thought, now this is where it's at. This is beautiful. Well, shortly after I'd done that, 2 or 3 months, I lost my job. I had to either resign or I would have been fired, terminated. So I chose to resign. I didn't ask God why, because I more or less knew that I hadn't been living for Him, been breaking promises and everything. So I was looking for a job and just couldn't find nothing. And I told God, I said, if what Your will be done, and He just kept making ways for us that we was getting money, we was living. I said, God, Your will be done, and everything will be all right. Well, this was September of 81 when I lost my job. I found one in November, I believe it was, 81, and it was horrible. I'll tell you, it was so unsafe. People couldn't work and everything. So I knew that wasn't it, so I thought I'd go into driving trucks. So I quit there, resigned, and went to a truck driving school to drive an 18-wheeler. And I got prayed, and God gave me a job doing that. And boy, it was horrible. I was sick, and this old boy I was riding with, he hated life anyway, I believe, and scared of driving on ice and snow through the mountains. And man, it just wasn't for me. So I quit that and come home. And I got another job about a week driving another truck. I had to go way up in Iowa. Went up in there and I wasn't feeling good and everything. I quit that and come back. I was only up for 2 days. I knew I wasn't going to like that. That truck driving just isn't for me. You had to be away from home all the time. So I come back and I thought, well, I'd go to Colorado. I'd go out to Denver and work, quite a bit of work out there and find me something to do out there. Well, I took my father with me and got out there, and there was work there, but I pulled a camping trailer just to try to save a little money so I wouldn't have to put up motels and things. Well, that cost just as much money with that camping trailer stay, as it would have been in a motel. Well, I was having a few heart pains now and then, and my father, he wasn't feeling too good, so I thought I better bring him on back. So this was getting close to my birthday anyway, in last March. And anyway, on my birthday, we've been praying and said, God, whatever You want, You give us something, whatever it is. And, I had another heart attack, April the 5th, right on my birthday. That's when I told God, okay, God, I'll testify, preach, whatever You want. You show me what You want to do, and I'll do it. So we found us a good spiritually led church, and it's of God, and got into it because of my divorces and things. I can't be Assembly of God minister, but this is Holiness Church of Christ, and it's a beautiful church. But this church is really full of God and everything. I won't go into the names of it, but anyway, if you can be a minister in this, and if that's what God is wanting me to do, this will be the church I can go out of. So I'm praying, and I told the preacher that what was going on, and God delivered me from alcohol and dope and numerous other things, and I was going to minister for God, be a preacher. If that's what God wanted, I'm going to give my testimony, or I'm just going to be a good churchgoer. Whatever it is, God is making a way. And God has been so good to us since then. We've had money coming in. I've applied for my Social Security disability. I don't know if we're going to get it or not, but we're sure going to try. And we'll stay in this church until something, if I go out into the ministry or just whatever, I'll give my testimony there at church, whatever is needed to be done. But we're going to live for God. And I know now that what I've done in my life, that God has forgiven me and can forgive anybody. Because I used to think, well, the old devil say, well, I want to be a minister, be a preacher, I want to live for God, preach. But the old devil would tell me, well, you just haven't been bad enough. And even though I have been delivered from dope and alcohol for over 10 years now, it was back in 1966, I guess it was, not 1971 is when I got delivered. The old devil tell me, well, look, you haven't done nothing yet. Go back out there and do a few things where you can really tell, you'll really have a testimony for God. Well, I kept doing that, and that just wasn't where it was at. And he seen he couldn't do no more there, so then he'd start on me. Well, what can you do? You can't sing. You can't play the organ. You can't. You're not a preacher like some of the preachers I'd really admire, like Brother Tommy Anderson, Brother Doug Klein, and there's just so many marvelous preachers, so many educated men that's smart in the Bible, and they live for God. But I told the old devil, look, just get behind me, Satan, because I am going to do what I can for God. God can use me. My father, he doesn't have much more than a third grade education, but through God and the Holy Spirit, my father's been one of the best ministers, best preachers I've ever heard. So God can do it for anybody, and if he wants to use my testimony in any way, I'm going to give it. I'm going to serve God, because what I've been through, I've raced, I've fought, I've just about tried everything, and there's no there's no peace in it or happiness like there is with God. Only God is where the peace and happiness, peace of mind, and the real happiness is. That's the only way to go, with God. Now I'm going to tell a few things that happened before God delivered me from the dope and alcohol. As with the dates and everything, I won't be too accurate. I probably won't even try to go into. But after I got out of the Navy in 1962, I believe it was, I got me a 57 Chevy, all hopped up, and I used to drive it crazy, just like I always did everything else. As a kid, 16, 17, I'd run stop signs in town, 110, 120 mile an hour. And if, I could have wiped out everybody with me and killed myself and anybody I'd hit or anything else. God was really I don't know if he was with me, but he was with my parents. They always prayed. They was faithful to God. That's what saved my life. There's no doubt in my mind, because it wasn't because of me praying, that's for sure, but it may be because God has something he wants to do in my life, or with my life. Well, anyway, I had a 57 Chevy, and it was raining. I worked construction, got off about noon, and so I went right to the bar and started drinking. It was about 7 o'clock at night. I was pretty well, not feeling too bad, and coming down this hill, I had about a 3-block run, and this car, he pulled. I started pulling out, and there was no way I could stop on that rain and everything. It was on one side of the street, I had to ride away, but I was probably running 90 mile an hour or better. There was a lady that had a carload of kids, and I knew I didn't want to hit them, so I hit him and tore front end completely off his 56 Plymouth. Then I hit a tree. When I hit the tree, and I had a 57 Chevy, it knocked me to the passenger side just about, and I had to hold the steering wheel. When I hit the Plymouth car, it knocked me, over towards the passenger side, and I had a tree. Well, the dash kind of come out to where, well, not a point, but it was rounded off, and it just, when I hit the tree, it just broke all my ribs on the right side in 3 places. Well, I couldn't breathe. My car bursted into flames. I banged up against the passenger side trying to get out. Well, I passed out because of the pain. I went back up and I crawled over to the driver's side trying to get out, and I couldn't get out there. So finally one guy got me out, a friend of mine, and dragged me away from the car because it was burning, and I still couldn't breathe. And it was, like I said, raining, misting rain a little bit. Well, they laid me there away from the car and on the sidewalk, waiting for the ambulance, police, or whatever to come. And anyway, the people, so I'm sure they was trying to help, but I was laying there in the rain, so somebody said, well, man shouldn't be laying out in the rain. So some lady, she went and got a blanket, a pillow. Well, they put a pillow under my head and and they covered me completely up because it was raining, I'm sure, Somebody said, no, you're not supposed to do that, and they pulled the cover down a little bit. Somebody else, they was all trying to help, God bless them, but some lady pulled a pill out from under my head hit the concrete, and that just about knocked me out, and I was trying to get onto my side because I couldn't breathe on my back because all these busted ribs. And I didn't know I was busted up so bad then. Wasn't too worried, but I just more concerned with being breathing and everything. And I guess one gentleman was gonna hit me with his fist, knock me out to keep me from hurting myself. I said, you ain't supposed to be moving around. Well, thank God some guy told him, you touch him and I'll break your neck. So that saved me from getting hit anyway, because I was in no condition to fight then. Well, anyway, first to come was the fire trucks. They got the fire out and everything under control, and the gasoline and everything washed away or whatever they do. I'm not sure what they was doing. TV come and everybody wanting to be on TV waving. I don't think I even made it, and I was supposedly been the star of the show. I didn't even get on TV. Well, then the cops come, the police. I shouldn't say cops, that's not really bad. Now, I never did ask them which they like to be called, and quite a few times I talked with them, but I never asked them that. Usually when I was talking to them, I was either wanting to fight them or call them sir, so I never got into finding out for sure what they wanted to be called. But 45 minutes later came the ambulance, and it was an old 50 or 51 Cadillac, and the two gentlemen that was driving it, one that got in the back with me, man, he smelled stronger than I did with alcohol. Anyway, all the hospitals are in the north end of St. Joe, Missouri, there where I lived at the time, had to wreck. Well, they started south. I told them, I said, no, I said, I don't want to go to Methodist Hospital. That's where my mother worked. And so they finally got turned around, heading in the right direction anyway. And I remember one in the front was saying, where's the siren at, man? I can't find the siren. And the other guy was trying to tell him where the siren was. Well, I don't think they ever got it to work. Well, anyway, in the north end, there was two hospitals. A sister's hospital. It was run by the Catholics. It was a good hospital, but my mother, like I said, worked at Methodist. Well, they took me there, the sisters. And I said, no. I said, I want to go to the Methodist. I said, just call me a cab, Your ambulance didn't have any shocks on it anyway or anything going you, and you got a few broken ribs. I had them all broke. Any little old bump hurts. So then they took me to the Methodist, finally. Got me there to Methodist Hospital, and they come, the old boy, the driver, he come around, he opened the back out, and both of them, they lifted me out. I was on those beds that raise up and down, so, well, when they was on them, they put them back in the ambulance. I guess they let it down, fold it. Well, this one gentleman, he let go of the bed to shut the door on the ambulance. Well, when he did that, the old bed collapsed, and it fell. And boy, I'll tell you, it just, man, all them broken ribs and everything. I turned the air blue for a while. I wasn't talking too nice. I wasn't praying then. I should have been, but I wasn't. Well, they got me in the emergency, and wanted to know who my doctors was. Well, I didn't have no doctors. I wasn't sick too much, only in the head. And so then somebody finally got a hold of my mother. Well, instead of calling doctors, my, typical mother, being a preacher's wife and everything, she called about 15 preachers. So here we had a whole hospital full of preachers and no doctors, Preachers are good, and I love them all, but that right then I needed a doctor, all them busted ribs, and find out what was wrong with me. So finally we got a doctor there, and when he got there, I was trying to pick glass out of my arm. I was picking glass out of my arm. They tell me don't do that. And I said, well, will you do it? And they said, no, we can't touch you, But I said, well, I'm going to do it then. I said, can I have a Band-Aid? Just give me a Band-Aid and I'll get up and leave. I didn't know it was hurt so bad. I couldn't move anyway. So anyway, they finally got me to my room and took care of me for that. And everything worked out pretty good. About a year later, I could cough and breathe pretty decent, but up till that, but it, at that speed and everything, I should have been dead then. But God, through my parents' prayer, they kept me alive on that one too. But so after I got out of the hospital, I got married and we moved to California and lived out there for a few years. And that's when, in 1966, we decided to go into old Mexico and on down South America and make our fortune. My brother had a gold dredge, and we didn't. But the only thing we got down there was sunburn and got some bad water. Had to come back to the United States. That Montezuma's revenge killed a lot of white people, a lot of Americans. We can't handle their water. So we come back, and later in '66, I got me a job. I don't know when I worked in construction or something, but I bought me a new 1966 Chevelle Super Sport, one of them go fast 4-speed and all that. Well, anyway, to come to find out, this was a factory experimental car, which nobody should have been able to buy other than, actually just only for drag racing or something like that. It was geared pretty low, and it was a 396. It was supposed to be a 360 horse or something like that. I don't know, but we come to find out later through Sun Equipment they was going to sponsor me in racing, and then it was over 450 horse. It was awful fast. So I drag race every time we get a chance, and every weekend we get us 3 or 4 cases of beer. Everybody want to find out where I was going to race, or go for a ride with me, and that was a thrill. Ferris wheel and all that, roller coaster. They thought, go for a ride with Phil. He got any guts. And that'd be the thrill of the weekend. But thank God I never killed anybody of that. But one weekend was at a party and was out on this road I knew well. And it had a couple less curves in it. Well, I stopped. I was being drunk. I don't remember why I did it. I knew the curves were there. Well, I started going through the gears. And was running 115, 20 mile an hour. When I came into this curve, when I seen it, and there was no time to hit my brakes or nothing, I knew that. I knew it was gone. So I tried to make it. Anyway, there's a guy sitting on the right side in a bucket seat, and a guy in the back, and a girl sitting on the console or beside me. Well, when I started turning, we sliding. She fell into me, and that made me whip the steering wheel, and we turned over. It was upside down. Went through a barbed wire fence upside down at 115 mile an hour, laid in a cornfield. Nose first, and then on the driver's side, the top was down about halfway past the steering wheel. Well, this had thrown me out of the car. About halfway, my legs was still inside. And slammed me down so hard in the mud, it was kind of muddy, that I couldn't get out. But underneath each arm, about, like I said, with the cornfield, there was corn stalks up about a foot high, cut off. Well, there was one, you couldn't have placed them any closer under each of my arms, right, up in the armpit. If it had been a few inches either way, it slammed me down on that, it went through my heart, went right through me, So God definitely laid me down into that cornfield like that. It had to be God or these angels, because nobody else could have done it. I thank God for that. Being alive through that is really a miracle. There's somebody we see today who don't know it. That didn't seem to learn me at all. I just thought, well, I lost that car and everything, and didn't have insurance on it or anything else. I don't know. It was heartbreaking, but to be alive is what counts through God, I guess. Wanting to be a bad guy, a tough guy, where you beat up on everybody and everything. Well, I went through that. I worked my way up to where I had a reputation, and the only way I could go to places would be sit with my back to the wall, watch out for somebody that was wanting to shoot me or beat me up for some reason. When you get a reputation, that's all it is. I fought so hard to get it, and then it's pretty stupid. I kept my hand busted most of the time, my lip banged up, one of my eyes black most of the time or something. Always trying to heal up from something. The last few years, I drank. Well, my hand was always broke for 2 or 3 years there. I never even get a chance to get it healed up. No knuckles on my right hand, or even as a kid, I carried a switchblade. Couple of things to put in my fist to keep from breaking them, so I could hit harder. I don't think I had to worry about it. I don't know if I could hit hard enough to break my hand then, but I sure carried enough weapons. Anyway, I was in California telling a dope story, and I had a good job out there and was working. And we decided to have a party. Well, we got us a pretty nice place to live. There's 3 of us. You know, a couple guys that worked with me, and we had an apartment with a pool and the whole bit. Boy, I mean, it was nice. Anyway, we decided to throw a big party, and we had the booze, the dope, and everything else. Well, we was gonna start on a Friday and break it up sometime Sunday night, late, or however long anybody wanted to party. We had gallons of scotch, gallons of whiskey, cases and cases of beer. We had marijuana, we had Dexedrine, Benzedrine, just about anything you wanted. And we was on the second story, and one of my friends, he got drunk, and he rode a wheelchair off into the swimming pool backwards. Well, we all thought this was funny. Well, about later on, I don't know if it's the first day, the second day, or what it was, I was loaded on dope and alcohol. I crawled up on top of this refrigerator we had and put a champagne glass down below it full of champagne, and I was going to show everybody how I could dive into that. You know, the old devil had me convinced I could make it. And thank God somebody pulled me down off of there. Anyway, I went to we made it through that. I don't know how, but I called my folks later, a week or so later, and told my dad, you know, I was getting pretty strung out on dope, and he was back in Missouri. Well, in a couple of days, he was out there to get me, so I came back to Missouri, and things wasn't much better back here. I found my dope and my alcohol, and just went on my way, you know, just the way the old devil has of working. And I remember one night sitting in the apartment I had back here. I got remarried, and we was separated. And, I don't think maybe we was ready to get a divorce by then or something, but sitting in my apartment one night, and the old, what they call DTs, the old devil's torment, what it is, when you just scared to death of something. I had a knife and a gun and a .45, and if anybody had walked in, even my parents I'd have shot them, or hard telling them, I don't know what I would have done, but it seemed like it'd last forever. And it was when later I told my folks I had to have help some way, because I couldn't go on living like that. I mean, I wouldn't live like that. There was just no way. I was on the bottom. And I don't know if it was a dream I had, or I was on dope one time, and it seemed like I was hanging out in space. Everything was black, and it was an aluminum ladder, an extension ladder. And the only thing I had a hold of was the tip of my little finger on my right hand. Just wasn't wrapped around or anything, but that was the only thing holding me and keeping me from going out into space, out in this black or whatever it was. I don't know the meaning of it. I don't know if I would have lost my mind. I don't know if I would have died. I still don't know the meaning of it. Maybe never will. But it was horror. I know that. And I thank God for bringing me through that one. One time back in '66, I was trying to outrun the highway patrol. I don't know who all was with me or what, but we was on the interstate highway running about 115, 120 mile an hour. My car wasn't running much faster than that, maybe 130. And the highway patrolman was gaining on me, so I just cut off a road, went down this bank and down through the grass and up over another bank and hit a hump, and I jumped a fence and lit in a cornfield. And just happened to land on an old farmer's road, and it took us to another road, and ended up back in town. I imagine the highway patrol still wondering what happened to me, but that was God's protection, and I didn't kill everybody, because I didn't know. I don't know what made me do it or anything else. You know, there's no way of knowing that. I used to go down the highway and 100-mile-an-hour just to scare everybody. I'd put the wheels spinning around in the middle of the highway for no reason, just for a thrill. And I guess it's crazy. It was crazy or something. But I'm going to tell about when I was a kid. My dad had a church in this little town of Lathrop, Missouri, and these people used to come to our church. They was precious. Man, they was probably in their mid-30s or something, man, woman. They had a boy, and they all had flat tops. No, not the woman didn't, but Well, anyway, we was always putting rocks and things in his tailpipe, and he'd rev his old car up and just blow them out. And well, just anything, he'd spin his wheels to anything for a thrill. One time I got the idea of stuffing a potato in his tailpipe. Well, my dad had just bought a new Chevy back in '52, I think it was. And my dad happened to be parked right behind him, our dad's car, and sure enough, that Sunday morning he come out of church, he knew we'd done something. He rev her up and split his muffler, and that potato come out of there just like a shotgun shell and broke headlight. My dad's new car, so that wasn't too good that time. And right now, my biggest battle is smoking. I've been praying that God would do something about that. I know He will, but that's been one of my hardest battles that I've been fighting and still fighting and asking God to take care of it. And I know He will.